A group of scouts go to kayak in an area that was constructed with little consideration for the environment because lots of trees were cut down to provide room, and this area was protected by the Countryside Agency. There was also no AALA risk assessment, but there was a Health and Safety Executive Licence, which meant the staff were trained and able to conduct the activities, but the trip was also very expensive and prepaid for. When the scouts got there was a storm, which meant they shouldn't have gone out to kayak, but the scouts still wanted to, and so the session was still led. The strengths of this is it was a Countryside Agency protected area. However, the construction had no regard to the environment, and actually this would have caused problem because trees were cut down and that actually emits CO2. So yeah, there's a bit of pollution in that too. Safety considerations, so strengths, there was HSE licensed and trained staff, which means that the activity that's fine. But as they were trained staff, they should have realised that the weather conditions were far too unsafe for the children to go out, and they shouldn't have let them, even though the trip was painful. They should have had a reimbursement, and there was also no AALA risk assessment to tell them what to do if the children got harmed or injured in any way. So the risk assessment that should have been done is this. If there's an extreme weather condition, the kayakers would have been harmed, and they should have just not been allowed to do it in these weather conditions, and they should have had appropriate training for less extreme weather conditions. So if it was slightly windy, they should have known what else to do to make them a little bit safer. So if it was really extreme, the severity is 3, and the probability of it happening is low because they shouldn't be out in these weather conditions anyway, but they would need to wear life jackets to just protect them a little bit further and to stop them from drowning. Also getting turned over in a kayak, so the kayakers would be harmed, and they need to be doing it in safe weather conditions, and the kayaking level can change, like it gets harder the courses that they can do it in and the locations. So if they're beginners, they need to do it in easier areas, so that there's less risk of something going wrong and getting turned over in the kayak. So the severity is 2. It could be quite dangerous, but it's not life-threatening, and I'm sure someone would help them soon. And the probability of it happening, if they're working well to their level, is not very high, so that's a 1. To fix this, they need to learn how to turn back over themselves. So orienteering, a group of teenagers are completing a small orange course. This is quite an easy one for them to do if they're experienced, and it's happening in a crow area. Right, so they are confident about their ability, and they find a faster way to get to the designated point, but it involves climbing up a rock face, and one of them accidentally knocks a bird's nest to the ground, and only one of them is first aid trained, which is quite silly because they're climbing. So the group did complete a risk assessment. Right, so the strengths was a risk assessment was completed, and it was a Countryside Agency approved area, and if that was stuck to, then the country, which happened if the Countryside was stuck to. But the weaknesses was the Crow Act was not abided by, and nor was the Countryside Code, as wildlife was harmed and disturbed. There was human disturbance, knocking off the bird's nest and probably killing them, which is not good. And there was erosion because you're climbing up a rock face, which means it's just helping add to it because it's gradual wear and tear of continuous touching that terrain. So safety precautions, strengths was the risk assessment. They were first aid trained, however that was only one of them, so that could be a bit of an issue, but at least one person would know what to do. And the weaknesses was they were climbing unsupervised, which meant if someone fell, then especially if the first aid trained person fell, then none of the group would really know what to do and how to help in the best way possible. So lots of harm could have come through that way. And the last risk assessment would be if they got lost, the group of orienteers would be harmed. And so there are designated points that are marked when you get to the point, and so if loads of points weren't designated, at least they would know where the group of orienteers, that sort of area where they got lost. But also there are supervisors at specific points, specific orienteer points. The severity is 1, it's not that serious, and the probability is 1, it's not likely to happen. And if they've all got mobile phones, then that's fine, and they've got flares as well. If it's an organised activity, then it's not as likely to be as severe as if the group were going out on their own accord and didn't tell anyone where they were going. So they could be charged at bulls or other areas, or other animals, if they're going up around like some areas with animals. So then the group of orienteers would be harmed, and actually so could the animals really. They'd be scared, it'd cause distress for all of them. So if they come across any animals, they've got to stay calm and not make sudden or threatening movements. The severity of it's 2, because they're not likely to die, they're likely to escape, but they could be harmed and injured, and the probability of it happening is quite low, because animals aren't usually that violent unless they're threatened. And so to avoid this, they really just need to avoid routes with animals if possible.